I know. Yes. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and us today being me, Brian Hunter, and the illustrious Marc Phillips, back from Germany, and we are here, and it is episode 7 of season 7. We're making our way to the back half. We're on the back 9, so to speak, the back 5. And you may notice from Marc, he did catch a little bit of the bug on the way back.
A bug, not the bug. No, I was tested. I was, and I'll tell you right now, this is the first time that I actually had the nasal thing, where they just stuck the thing in my nose, and I said it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad at all. I was surprised. I was like, oh, that didn't hurt. It's weird, but it didn't hurt. So anyways, yes, so my voice tends to get an octave lower when I get sick, so here we are. I think it's just seasonal allergies. Munich was really hot, and my hotel had no AC, so I wound up sleeping with the windows open, and that was probably the recipe for my nasal angst right now.
If you guys follow the show, we had a really great show about 3 episodes back for Expona 2022, where we all got to sit down and chat it up. That show was great in Chicago. Good times. Check out that podcast if you're interested in what kind of came out of that audio show. But Marc, for this one, he went solo. He went out to Munich, High End.
I went to the largest high-end audio show in the world by myself and attempted to cover as much as I possibly could.
Today's episode is brought to you by Musical Surroundings. For over 30 years, Musical Surroundings has distributed high-performance analog playback equipment to vinyl enthusiasts and music lovers throughout the United States. Based in Oakland, California, Musical Surroundings represents world-class brands like Clear Audio, Hanna, DS Audio, and their own line of Musical Surroundings phono preamplifiers. To learn more about the exceptional turntables, cartridges, and analog accessories they offer, visit musicalsurroundings.com. That's musicalsurroundings.com. Today's episode is brought to you by WellPleasedAV. Importer Mark Sosa has hand-selected a remarkable collection of high-performance brands like Inuos, QLN, Marison, Qualiton, Gigawatt, and more. Each of these specialist manufacturers are driven by engineering products that communicate the lifeblood of music. Check out everything WellPleasedAV has to offer by visiting www.wellpleasedav.com. That's www.wellpleasedav.com. We kind of do a lot of freewheeling names, like we kind of work on the names for the shows. But what do people actually call this show when you're at the show? Because is it the Munich? Is it the high-end show? What do they kind of call it while you're there?
Okay, officially it's high-end, and this year was high-end 2022. And I think here in America, we throw in the word Munich so people know exactly what we're talking about. The Munich high-end show. We all say, I went to Munich. Are you going to Munich? They don't say, Are you going to high-end? So I think that's what it is. But the official name of it is high-end 2022.
So, yeah, Marc flew all the way over there. He was by himself. He crushed it. And don't forget, if you guys want to check out more of his written coverage, it is live on the site right now, part-time audio.
It is flowing in continuously. So I have 3 more. I've got 1 coming in. So we're going to race right through all the way leading up to the buyer's guide. So the summer's buyer guide will be coming out next weekend, so on the 3rd of June. So, but until then, right up until 0 hour, I'm going to have these Munich reports coming in.
So he's got pictures, of course. He's got some impressions, and are you going to do a best of? Because I think we want to talk about some of the specifics on this show, but obviously.
Absolutely. We talk about, the first thing though is that the sound quality of the rooms at Munich traditionally are not great. They're not supposed to be great. It's more of a place to do business. There's a lot of bleed through the rooms. Some of the rooms there's a lot of open, conference space. So it's not the typical show where you go into a room and you've got a day or two to completely optimize it and set up for the best performance, where this is more a lot of static displays, a lot of people just standing there next to a speaker and you'll never hear it play. But despite all that, the sound in the rooms were really, really good. And I'm going to say something controversial. The sound generally, except for the room bleed through, which is always a problem there, was better at Exponent. So I listened to some of the same systems, at Exponent and Munich, and here in Munich, for some reason, they just pushed the envelope just a little bit more.
You're saying that you heard some better rooms at Munich.
Same systems. There was two or three. Inuas they're doing ABX comparisons between the Inuas statement with their new next generation power supply. And I heard it in Exponent. It makes a difference between the new power supply. Here in Munich, the system overall was just even better, and I wound up spending more time in there just listening to music this time because I thought it sounded better. Not that it sounded good the first time. The Dashi Jeff Joseph room is the same thing.
I wanted to just ask you your personal opinion. What style of show do you kind of prefer or do you think is more fun? Do you like the big time with all the closed off rooms, Expona? Or is this Munich style like kind of a better way to do business for you, or does it not matter?
I think it has something to do with, for instance, I did a lot of CESs in my time, and CES and Munich, it's more of an industry thing. So it's more professional. It's business is being done there. It isn't so much about getting the public into exposure. So you had two. So Munich and CES are kind of in that one category where it's very business. You're there to do business. You're there because it's important because everybody in the world is there. So you deal with a smaller show that we deal with in the United States where it has more of a family atmosphere and it's all about being open to the public and just meeting the people and hanging out. It's two very different environments. I miss doing CES. I used to do it every year in Vegas for many, many years. And I kind of miss it, but it was also hard work and it was expensive. So for me as a journalist, these smaller shows that are more relaxed, it's easier for me to do my job. But the one thing I'll say about Munich is that I met a lot of people that I've known for many years but have never met in person. That Munich and CES were the places to see all the people that you usually only email or talk on the phone once in a while. That's what's great about that. So it's a mix-up.
Today's episode is also brought to you by one of the originals in high-end audio, Purist Audio Designs. Purist Audio Design made the first fluid-shielded audio cable over 35 years ago and still makes them today right here in the U.S. For over 35 years, Purist Audio has connected you to the music. They passionately make high-end, high-crafted audio cables designed specifically to the needs of your system. They list their specs, such as resistance and shield quality, and you can find them at PURISTAUDIODESING.com. Purist Audio Designed is veteran-owned and available worldwide. Today's episode is also sponsored by SCHIIT Audio. SCHIIT Audio designs and builds audio components in California and Texas. Based in Valencia and Corpus Christi, their wide line of amps, DACs, and audio accessories fit any budget, starting at $49. For a full rundown of all their products, visit SCHIIT.com or stop by their retail store in Old Newhall, just north of Los Angeles. That's SCHIIT.com. So, Munich. What are some of your top line talking points that you thought we should all know about the show?
I went there primarily. I wasn't going to go. We had already decided that we weren't going to cover the show for Part-Time Audiophile. But at the last minute, I was invited to go because Tidal Audio was going to show their Bugatti from Tidal line, from the Bugatti the Automobile. This amazingly beautiful stuff that's a cosmetic match to Bugattis, but also these are products that are taking the art of speaker building to new levels of engineering, and it was going to be a big deal. It was going to be one of the main things that were talked about at the show, hopefully, was the Bugatti line was there. The problem was that a few weeks ago, the entire Tidal factory, with the exception of Jorn, who heads it, he wasn't there, but they all came down with COVID at once.
Oh, no.
And so they weren't allowed to show. So basically the room they were supposed to be in was closed up and empty, and they just have to wait till next year to do it. But I was able to get enough information from Jorn and Doug White to talk about the exciting things that are happening And so I'll be including that in my show reports. That was kind of a strange thing. You get there and all of a sudden Doug White said, we're making lemonade here. So we're trying to do our best with it. And so I still was able to cover incredible amounts of the show. But that was one thing, is that COVID really does affect the industry in Europe. Of course, their rules there are very, very cut and dry. Boom. Can't show, sorry. And that's the way it is.
You can't show if you tested positive for COVID.
Yeah, well, what it is you're bringing in product from the factory where everybody caught it. So you have to be able to just control the situation. So they just said no ifs, ands, and buts. So that was the one thing. So that was, even though we have that, the show was probably less than 10% were masked up. Everybody felt fairly confident. It was a mix of fist bumps and handshakes and hugs. It seemed fairly normal. The only difference is that the last time I went was in 2019, and it was a smaller show. And I'm not sure yet about how much of that is from other companies that were not able to show because of COVID, or a lot of people just decided not to do it. It was a smaller show. That's one of the main reasons why I was able to cover as much of it as I did. I went through in a couple, like a day and a half. I said, is that it? Did I hit every single floor that I need to hit? And apparently was. Didn't mean I got everything, but it mean I at least walked into 90% of the rooms there.
How many vendors were there? How many rooms?
Well, it's hard with Munich because, first of all, so you've got upstairs rooms and atriums, and you've got the open floors where everything is just partitioned off. They have drop-in rooms, so you actually have these little buildings that they bring into the convention hall and set up, and that kind of approximates a room. So I couldn't tell you what the actual number is. It's a lot. Anybody who's been to Munich knows. One day I had 26,000 steps, so that'll give you an idea of how much ground there is to cover at Munich.
What would you kind of say is the overall vibe of the show this time? I mean, obviously there's caution because of the COVID. The rumors or the word on the street, I guess you could say, is that quite often it is a more mixed bag of company. You get all different types of people. It's not, obviously, because it's B2B, you don't just get the typical American audiophile rummaging through there.
Well, the exciting thing about Munich, and you also see this I used to see it at CES as well because it was an international show, is you get to see all the stuff that we don't necessarily get in the United States. So if you've been reading about these brands, and there was a couple of them were the Fink Team, which is a German speaker manufacturer, been hearing rave things about them. But up until recently, they're just now getting to the United States. But, this is stuff they've been talking about this brand in Europe for years. They were there, so it's a chance to see things that I've heard about. Maybe they're not available in the U.S., or maybe they're just hard to find, whatever. But that's the fun thing, is just to see what the rest of the world is listening to, and knowing that in the United States, we don't get everything that's happening out there.
In the sea of inflation and rising costs across the board for supply chain issues and stuff, did you notice anything price-wise out there?
Absolutely. So I wanted to preface, especially when I'm doing these show reports, that the first thing the readers will ask if I omit is, well, what's the price? Well, in most cases at Munich, I can only give you approximation because, number one, in many cases, these are brand new products. First time the public is seeing them, they might not have decided on a price yet. And if I do know this from importing and distributing, is that you can tell people, hey, it's coming out and it's going to be this much. And then when it comes out, you usually say, well, we had to change the price because of logistics and everything. So prices change because of that. We're also talking about exchange rates will affect what the price will be in the United States. And that's always been around. That's always the situation. But what's new is that there is inflation. It is affecting high-end audio industry. And we saw this in Expona. And right now, like I said, we're compiling the buyer's guide for next week. Usually we have to go through and we have to double check all the prices. And this time, almost everybody's prices are going up, and in some cases, substantially. So there were a lot of products being released. And when you asked them how much it was, there's just a lot of ifs and buts, and we're not sure, but it's probably going to be around that. So that is one thing. But the scary part is that almost everything is going up. In a couple of cases, I know that I got one price at Expona last month, and here in Munich, it's a higher price already. So we have to be prepared for that much.
I blame you, Mark. I blame you, since you're the one. I like to kill the messenger.
I accept full responsibility for driving high-end audio prices across the globe.
I got a vibe. I got the look. I got the window. I'm forming an image in my mind of this show. Tell me a little bit about some really great specific things that you heard this time out.
I would say the most surprising little thing right off the bat is Moon by Sim Audio. And they have their first speaker, the Voice 22. And you're thinking, if you know anything about Moon, I like it. I like Moon stuff a lot. It's fairly sophisticated stuff. And as the years go on, it gets better. It's really, really good stuff. So they finally decided to come out with a bigger speaker, with their own speaker. And what they come out with this really kind of a small mini monitor. A $3,000 a pair mini monitor that just comes out. It's in white and black. Looking at it, you're not going to think it's anything special. It's well finished and everything. But you're like, why this speaker? Why now? Why is this the one that they want to... You sit down and you listen to it, and it's just... I'm like, you're kidding me. I get this impression a lot from the small speakers when they're really, really good. In this case, it's like, this thing is going to be it's going to be big. It's $3,000 a pair, and it just fills the room. These are really small mini monitors, and it was energizing big rooms and making everybody go, whoa. That's the first thing that really surprised me that I was really happy in discovering.
I feel like Moon Audio, aren't they known for their electronics mostly?
Yeah, it's all electronics, and as far as I know, this is their first speaker. This is their only model, but it's kind of obvious from what they've done with this speaker that, calling it the Voice 22 even, is there's going to be more, probably larger. So this is probably the first one. They didn't come out with a speaker just to have a speaker. They came out with a speaker, it looks like and sounds like they did it because they have something up their sleeve and they have ideas on how to do this right. For $3,000, this was superb. The other big surprise is Borison. And the Borison M1, which is, again, those tiny little monitors that cost a lot of money. And I've had problems hooking up with Borison/Avic, which does electronics, and ANSYS, which does cables. And I apologize. I'm probably mispronouncing all of this stuff. And that's going to happen probably more than once because there's some crazy names. And I don't speak a word of German, which is always a problem. It's all one company under one kind of umbrella. Borison speakers, Avic electronics and digital sources, and ANSYS cables. And for a long time, I've been hearing about them at shows, and everybody says, oh, they're really good. And I've never really sat down and covered one of the rooms, usually because somebody else at the show will do it. So this is the first time I said, I'm going to listen to these. I don't know how much these speakers were. I'm going to have to dig in a little bit more. But I know that the Special Supreme version of these tiny little monitors are $55,000 a pair. So it's going to be big dollars anyways. But in terms of little speakers sounding big, whatever matrix I can build around that idea that what's the smallest speaker with the biggest sound, I'm going to say these Borison M1s were off the charts. And so the placement was way out into the room along the sidewalls. Okay, almost halfway up. I know that when you do these things with small speakers, they couple to the room. If you have to get it really exact, but it'll couple to the room, and you'll just have this beautiful full bass that blows your mind, which was exactly what was happening in this room. But if these are that much, if these are $55,000, they make a good argument for themselves because that was superb sound. I've already seen one other magazine pick those speakers in that room as their best sound show, and I don't disagree with it right now. I'm on the search for all these great two-way monitors, and this one suggests that I might have found the greatest one of all at a price, but sound was amazing.
Goat
could be. They asked me if I wanted to review them, and I'm like, I do now. It's like, wow. That might be.
I'll just put them in my car. I'll slide them in my luggage. No worries.
Oh,
folks.
They're tiny. Yeah, they're small. I'll carry them on the plane. I don't care.
One under each arm. Don't mind me. Just carrying $50,000 worth of stuff.
So the next one, and Americans will be very familiar with this already, though, is the DeVore Fidelity. He's got a couple of new models coming out. One is called it's the orangutan line, and it's the one called the O Baby, and it's O/baby, and meaning O for orangutan, but O Baby, blah, blah, blah. These look like smaller versions of the orangutan, the 93 and the 96. More simple, but still really beautifully finished. They're going to run for, I heard the price of $57.50 per pair, so under $6,000 a pair for these, hopefully. I was able to sit and listen to the O96s first, and it reminded myself about how much I really like his speakers, John DeVore speakers, as well as the orangutan models. I'm surprised I've never sat down and really reviewed a pair, but I really want to. But these babies are for $6,000. Again, it'll blow your mind how good these are. They get really deep in the bass. They fill a large room, and they're easy to place. They were great. So if you're wondering if the new DeVores are going to be any good, I'll tell you right now, they're fantastic.
I'm personally a little obsessed with that orangutan line just because I've seen them. I've heard the top of the line, but also it's my understanding that the line was designed to be very efficient, right? So you could use them with more tube-based stuff, if you like, which makes them a little bit more of the exception in the space, I think, than the rule. Would you say that's correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's the whole idea. If high efficiency isn't your priority, then you move over to the Gibbon line, which are also great speakers. So the orangutan line is the high efficiency, with the exception of that reference, which is 4 of those boxes. They're 2-ways, but they're just beautiful boxes, wide baffles, classic design, and high efficiency. And their O is like the number one. The orangutans are always one of your best choices for instance, Shindo. Shindo amps love the DeVore orangutan line. This is an orangutan, but just brought in at a lower price. But as far as I could tell, I was like, okay, they're going to sound a little bit smaller than the 96s, but otherwise it's going to be the same. It's like, yeah, but I didn't notice any real lack in scale in the babies. The babies sound big. The babies sound big enough for me to where I could be happy with them. I think they're going to make a big splash, and you're going to be able to get this kind of quality now for half the price of the others in the line. So there's a brand of amplifiers right now from Italy called Riviera Labs, and again, they're just starting to make their way. I think they've just got a distributor in the U.S., so we're going to hear more about these, but they're kind of chunky integrated amplifiers. There's a Levante integrated amplifier that's kind of making the rounds and getting reviewed everywhere. I believe it's about $16,000 for this. It's just beautifully made stuff. It looks really interesting, and I said to myself, wow, I really think that something is going to be something I'm going to enjoy. And I had my first chance with them, and I went into this room, Riviera Labs, and they were using their big monoblocks, which are not that big, but they're the flagships, and their preamp, and they had a pair of audio NEC, so audio NEC speakers that appear to be modular. In other words, they had this unusual folded tweeter kind of assembly, and they had bass modules, and the lowest one, the smallest model in the line, is basically one of each, and then they just start stacking modules as it gets bigger and bigger. The sound was absolutely superb, and I just said, okay, so this could be a big thing. I like this brand. One of the noteworthy debuts is and we got into a heated debate about this in the PTA war room, but it's Kuzma just came out with a tone arm that has a sapphire. It's called the Saphir, SAFIR. It looks like it's almost like an acrylic tone arm, but it's sapphire. We had somebody in the war room said, oh, it's just a more expensive version of what they're already doing, and is it going to do any good? All I can say is I saw two turntables at the show that were using it, and they were among the best sounding analog setups at the show. So I'm not going to say it's good, bad, overpriced, or what, but it's pretty cool that, using sapphire, it's kind of like cactus needle cantilever on the Soundsmith Hyperion. It's just something, it's like a sapphire arm.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
The whole arm, I believe, is like, I think Grado had one as well, didn't they? A sapphire.
I'm about to write up, I'm going to start talking about that, and I'll dig in a little bit deeper, but and Kuzma, of course, their tables were everywhere. The arms were everywhere. The 4-point arm is still considered one of the finest arms you could buy right now. Kuzma had a strong showing, but this arm people were buzzing about it. They liked it. But there was one that was kind of undeniable, that there were a lot of good rooms. There were big rooms. There were plenty of big rooms. So we had a room with Wilson Chronosonic XVX tied into everything that Nagra of Switzerland makes. Mm-hmm. So you have this incredible Nagra system, including there's a new tape deck. All the things that they sell in one system and hooked up to Wilson's, the biggest Wilson's. And that was one of the rooms that you couldn't get into. It was a room and a vestibule and a hallway outside it, all crowded with people trying to get in and listen to this. And so I did finally on Sunday get to have some quality time in the sweet spot. And it's one of those systems that, what else do you need? It's getting everything. I can't hear anything wrong with this. It's doing it all at God knows what the price was for everything included that I was listening to. But of course, it sounded good.
Hold on, did you say tape deck?
Yeah, well, yeah, because Nagra has their digital recording devices.
They're like a reel-to-reel or a cassette player?
No, reel-to-reel.
Reel-to-reel. Okay, just to clarify that.
They're famous.
Like, dude, they went retro? Whoa!
No, the recording deck is probably, it's a portable recording deck, and it's legendary for being the finest of its kind. And then they stop making it, and then it appears that they're making it again. Well, so Nagra is doing things for the 70th anniversary of Nagra. That's one of the things they're doing, is they're bringing out a special version of the deck. But the other thing they do is they introduce their 70th anniversary turntable, which, again, one of these things that we were told, we don't know what the price is, but we were told it was six figures. So it's going to be over $100,000. This thing was beautiful, and we were listening to it play in the system. It sounds like it's going to be a winner. It's going to be highly desirable, and all the people who want the finest turntable in the world are going to give it an audition to see, because it looks like it's going to be a pretty impressive achievement. And then the other one was the avant-garde room. So we had Scott Holgott fell in love with the avant-garde acoustics horn loudspeakers at Expona, to the point where he was suggesting he would like to buy a pair. I was surprised at that, not because there's any, I love avant-garde. I just never thought it was Scott's thing, but it's interesting that he came around to it. So they had the big room with the big center portion, which is the 7-foot folded horns. All of that stuff, all hooked up to, here's another one I'm probably going to mispronounce, WADAX, so WADAX. So the WADAX was there. They had an SME turntable, and it looked like a 30, and it was CH Precision. It was just all the great stuff here. And that room was packed. It was a big room. That room, it was harder to gauge because the crowd got so much in the way of the sound that I never got a chance to really hear what the system could do. Like I could, the Nagra system, I got to the point where I got a fixation on it, and I knew exactly what it could do. I couldn't hear that in the avant-garde room because just way too many people, too big of a room. There's just no way to get in the sweet spot for any time. There were people that I felt like they were camping out to run for that sweet spot when it was available. So that's how, so it's hard for me. I mean, I got into a pretty good spot, but just the people were swarming. And so I'm not going to say I'm not going to put it on my best sound at show only because I didn't hear it sound its best. But
I feel like I need to make you a t-shirt that says, I'm going to the sweet spot in the front, and on the back it says, do you know who I am?
Yeah.
Because if you say I'm going to the sweet spot, and then you could just turn around and be like, yeah, do you know who I am?
Yeah. Don't you know who I am?
I'm joking, folks. I'm totally joking. Mark is so gracious. He would never do that.
It's been offered to have some poor show attendee thrown out of their seat for me, and I'll never let that happen. So.
I've told the story many times before, but before I did this, I went to a couple audio shows, and I have been thrown out of the sweet spot for some stereophile people and some other people before, and I was a little bit bewildered. It doesn't obviously happen anymore, but I can understand why you would want to do that. As an attendee, I was very unpleased. It was very unpleasant.
When I was an exhibitor, I tried to ensure that they kind of had a quiet environment to study everything, but I wasn't going to clear a room for anybody. I don't care. I just think that's rude, especially when these people are traveling and they're just being treated like second-class citizens. So I will never ask anybody to move for me. I will gently wait and slide in when I can, and that's just the way it is. So it's a trick. You have to be
courtesy,
you have to be courteous at these shows. You can't hog the spot. When they clear the room for me and they sit me down, I still don't want to take too long because I want somebody else to appreciate this. I hear this all day long.
As a matter of politeness, as a matter of protocol, how long would you say is the appropriate amount of time to sit in the sweet spot?
I think it probably has something to do with how many people are in the room. If you're in an empty room, there's times at high-end shows that you're the only person in the room for quite some time. You stay as long as they're playing DJ for you. If I'm a member of the press and they're telling everybody else, they're kind of telling, let him do that. I'll probably sit 2-3 songs, maybe. Just so I'm hearing a cross selection of different types of music. That's what they want me to hear anyway. So I usually let them dictate, but if I'm just in a room by myself, 2-3 songs, I think, and then let somebody else get in there.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure is going to be my best sound at the show. It was a pretty amazing system, and here's where my lack of German prowess speaking this language is going to. So the speaker is, I'm going to say Gebel. So it's pronounced
Spell it out for me. Spell it out.
Okay, so here's crazy German, but I kind of get it. Is okay. So it's Gobel, but you have to put a bar over the O. If you don't put a bar over the O, you can spell it Goebel. But then when I'm looking at the website, they put an umlaut over the O, and I assume that makes it Gebels instead of, it's not Gobel, it's Gebel, I believe. Gebel High End make these speakers. So it was the Gebel room, and again, they had the True Life Audio amplification, which our own Panagiotis Karavitas reviewed last year, and it's the most expensive amps we have currently on our buyer's guide. And, this is an expensive system. The subwoofers alone, they were $30,000 a piece. There were additional options you could add to each one. Speakers are $91,000, so this puts it just under $200,000 for the system, for the speakers alone. It had the Kronos Discovery turntable, which starts at $100,000. It has the WADX, that WADX reference stack, which is possibly 140,000 euros. Everything in this room was super expensive. And sometimes when you walk into a room like this, sometimes it works, sometimes it's a big disappointment.
Right.
This was wildly successful. It was one of the most dynamic systems I've ever heard. And the exhibitors knew for some reason, perhaps they already loved percussion music. But every time I went in there, they were playing some kind of crazy, trippy percussion track. But there was one point where you could tell it was a drummer, and I don't know who it is or what the music was. It was so hard to pin it down. This drummer, he had a gigantic drum kit, just amazingly. But he was all over this thing, and it was just rolling thunder and just unbridled power. And it's one of the best sounding systems. I mean, talk about goosebumps. I mean, this was exhilarating. It was an amazing system, and I kept going in there and hearing it over and over and saying, no, this doesn't let me down in any possible way. There's a point where it's, okay, I know what perfection sounds like, so to speak, but I'm also looking for memories, listening sessions that I'll remember for the rest of my life because they were so amazing and so exciting. And this is going to be one of those. This is one of those brands where I walked in and not knowing anything. Dr. Karavitas is the one who said, go into that room. That's probably going to be the best sound at the show. Mm-hmm. And he was right. I'm supposed to declare to the entire world that he was right, that was the best room at the show. But it was. It was. Oh, my. And, they threw everything they possibly could at it. They just throw such a huge system at you, and they assemble it and set it up with such expertise that it's like the pinnacle of what we do as an industry. And here it is. This is a completely new brand. Dr. K will always tell you, oh, no, they've been around for a long time. You just don't know about them. And I think that's what it is. But going to international shows is that everybody's like, oh, you've never heard this before? It's very big here. So there's a lot of that. But this stuff, that system is probably one of the finest systems I've ever heard. At a show anyways. And I will never be able to fit it into my house, but I would like to one day.
One of your houses, you mean? One of my. Well, I'd like it in one of my houses. Maybe the New York loft, the Hamptons. No,
I think these are maybe too big and heavy for the New York loft. The New York loft needs something like those Boris and M1s. That would be a loft.
It's so funny because if you keep an eye out in movies and TV. The product placement for a stereo is very common because it's a great filler. It makes an area look more sophisticated. It takes up space in a cool way, that kind of a thing. And they don't go giant, generally speaking. It's too much. They mostly have shoulder length at the highest. But you will see really cool audiophile brands just sprinkled in the background of your favorite movies and TV shows if you keep an eye out. So New York Loft, my point is, it's definitely probably got a couple of those, but not the giant. I always think of that when it comes to the MBLs, the double stack, the huge ones.
Oh, yeah.
What room do those go in? They're so tall.
At the same point, you say to yourself, how come somebody isn't doing product placement for more MBL? Because that stuff is undeniably, you need the millionaire's house, which is traditionally when you see it as some rich guy and he's got something really cool in the background. Why not MBL? there's not a lot of gear that's more cool than MBL. So somebody needs to talk to them. Maybe that's my next career is I'm going to be like, because I know people in the film industry, I'll be the guy who recommends, oh, you got to get some MBL in this scene. It's going to be a perfect match. That could be me. I could be famous.
You could be the guy. The guy.
I could be the guy who does that. Oh, you got to talk to Mark. He's the guy. I'll be that guy.
That's an awesome summary. Thanks so much for that, Mark. Do you have any final kind of parting thoughts on the Munich high-end show, High End Munich 2022?
This was, for me, outside of doing CES as an exhibitor, probably one of the toughest shows I've ever done. COVID did have a part of this. Okay, I kept thinking of myself as Matt Damon in The Martian, where if you've seen the movie, as the idea behind it is that he keeps solving problems, and after you solve enough problems, you get to go home. And that's what it was for me. It was I constantly had 3 or 4 things in front of me that I had to figure out, or else anything from not making it home would be the biggest thing I was concerned about. To be let back in the United States, you had to have a COVID test no more than 24 hours old. And so my flight was Monday morning, and all the COVID testing centers in Munich were closed on Sunday.
Oh, jeez.
So, and I go through the normal like freakouts because things don't work in Europe the same way they work for me. So there was a point where I was having breakfast with Doug White, and I grabbed the pepper shaker. I could not get it to work, and Doug had to grab it out of my hand and goes here, but it was a completely different way. So, and little things like this didn't happen to me this time, but when you go into your hotel room, you have to stick the card in that little slot in the door to make the lights work.
What?
So yeah. And so it's just, I really spent a lot of time this time, and this is only my second time in Europe, but it was a lot of the, how do I do this? How do I do this? How do I do this? Oh my gosh. But usually it was just a matter of me asking around. I usually got the answer, but there were times I said, I'm never coming to Munich again, but I'm going to be there next year. I think the important thing to do, which everybody else seems to do, is take extra time. I went in 2019. That was the last time that they had the show. The last time I went, and it was my first time in Europe. I flew there, did the show, flew right back. And a couple days after I got home, I just said, was I really in Germany? Was I really in Europe the first time? It's just all a blur. And I really wanted to make sure that I saw extra places this time. But unfortunately, like I said, I flew in, did the same thing, flew out. And it was a little more difficult because last time I was flying from the East Coast, and this time I was flying from the West Coast. So it was 14-hour flights each way.
Adds quite a bit coming from the other side.
Yeah,
for people who haven't gone to the show and are thinking about attending, was the language barrier much of an issue for you, or is everything pretty English friendly?
Okay, so and I discovered this last time. So I toyed with the idea of learning German. In fact, after I went the first time, I said, you know what, I think I want to learn a little German so that when I go the next time, I can at least get around. So Germans will tell you, we all speak English. You don't need to speak German. Well, what you do is you either say hallo or you say hi, hello, and they immediately know. They immediately know if you're, and it seems like Munich, especially, it's all English and German. Everything's English and German. So you're one or the other. If you talk to somebody and you let them know you're speaking English, and you can't do it in that ugly American way where the ugly American always assumes everybody speaks English, and so they pretend not to. The first time I came to Munich, spoke to my first person, I said, do you speak English? And the response was, I'll try to do my best, sir. So so I don't know. I think it's just the way you do it is you just kind of say hello in English.
It's kind of about the approach, right? It's about the approach.
Right. So that's okay. So based on that, you can go to Munich and not worry about speaking German. Your English will carry you far until you get a cab. And that's what I discovered the first time, is that the people who, in most cases, a lot of the drivers are immigrants, and they spend all their time learning German. So you throw something else at them, they're like, oh, so that's the only thing, but you can get around it, especially if you're doing like Uber or everything. You just hand them the information. Everything is fine. I didn't have any problem going around. But there's times when you really want to talk to these people, and things are back to normal in the industry, and that Munich, I'll probably be going next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. I should learn some German. And I'll tell you, I did eat the crispy pork knuckle this time, and it was fabulous. So there was that, they ordered it in 2019. I was the only one at the table who didn't get it because it looked weird. It looks like a pig's foot dropped in a deep fryer. I had it. It's everything they say it is. It's amazing.
Mark, thank you so much for your insight.
You're welcome.
The Occasional Podcast is a production of the Part-Time Audiophile Network, which includes PartTimeAudiophile.com, The Occasional Magazine, the PTA Newsletter, and AudioHead.com. You can stay in touch with us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. The Occasional Podcast is produced and hosted by Brian Hunter, executive produced by Scott Hall at PTA Productions. If you haven't already, please subscribe to The Occasional Podcast on iTunes, Google, Spotify, or wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.